My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, May 13th to order. Today we have 3 items listed on our agenda. However, item 2B, which is 1736 La Cornelia Drive, has been withdrawn by the applicant, so we will not hear that item. And I've had no other requests for changes to the agenda. In regards to announcements and appeals, I have no announcements, and we've had no recent appeals. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? Seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which is 324 Sherman Road, if the applicants would like to come up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Anytime you're ready, Joanne.
Okay. This is approximately a 14,395 square foot lot, which is currently vacant, and the property is zoned A1. The proposed project involves the construction of a new 2-story, 2,301 single-family residence with an attached 419 square foot 2-car garage, so there are residents in the garage, and 283 square feet of raised wood decks. The proposal will replace a single-family dwelling and 2-car garage that were destroyed in the T-fire. The requests before you today are a front setback modification to allow new construction within the required 35-foot front setback, and an interior setback modification to allow new construction within the required 15-foot interior setback. The project was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board and was forwarded to the staff hearing officer with comments. A little background: in 1976, modifications were approved for 5 parcels on Sherman Road to have reduced front and interior setbacks. And upon granting of that modification, this property had a front setback of 10 feet at the closest point and an east interior setback of 8 feet. The proposed project is to locate portions of the dwelling approximately 25 feet from the front property line and to locate the garage 10 feet from the front property line instead of the 35 feet required. In addition, the proposed project would be to locate the garage and dwelling 12 feet from the east interior property line instead of the 15 feet required, and to locate this balcony approximately 8 feet from the east interior property line. The lot is site constrained due to the existing topography and the small size of this A1 zone lot. Staff supports the front setback modification because the proposal will result in less of an encroachment than what previously existed at the property, and the second-story mass of the dwelling is set back. The staff also supports the interior setback modification for the garage and the dwelling. However, staff does not support the request for the deck in the interior setback because it will provide an outside area that may adversely impact the adjacent neighbors. Transportation staff has reviewed the project and are okay with the garage, and it will function as proposed. However, they have recommended that they work with transportation for the driveway to meet the parking design standards, and that all work located in the public right-of-way will require a separate public works permit. Therefore, conditions have been included to that effect. In addition, there's an oak tree over here by the area of construction, so an arborist letter was submitted that include recommendations for tree protection measures during construction, and that condition has been included as part of this proposal. So staff would like the project approved and supported with the findings and conditions outlined in the staff report, except for the balcony here. That concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Sure. I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
Amy Von Protz, designer.
So I think Joanne covered most of it. I'll provide some additional information that just some additional details. So this lot and all the lots on basically the downhill side of Sherman Road. Sorry, this aerial is sort of small, but let me orient it the right way. this is our lot right here. And everything else is the same way. We got really steep slopes that start almost immediately when you get past the road. And these are all recent rebuilds, all approved with almost exactly the same modifications that we're seeking today. And there's this big oak area that's down here on the slopes that exists on our lot as well. We didn't show all the oaks down here because we're just not doing anything in that part of the site. This tree here is, I believe it's that tree right there. So we didn't want to push the house too far down this slope, but we did want to pull as much as we could out of the front setback in the redesign of this house. So here was the original design, which had a huge portion of the house up in the front setback, and actually a pretty significant portion into the interior setback over on this side. And we were able to reconfigure the footprint of this house to pull almost all of it out of the front setback, and particularly the second story mass is almost entirely pulled out of the second story, the front setback. So we made the footprint sort of condense, and it's just more of an efficient footprint. It's just more stacked and compact and fits in a smaller building envelope, and that's how we were able to do that. So we do need a little bit of relief on the interior setback on this side. We're maintaining the exact same interior setback that was with the previous house over here, although providing quite a bit more setback over on the other side relative to what was there before. When we were at Single Family Design Board, initially we had a design that looked a lot more like this, and this neighbor had some concerns about location of decks and windows, and we relocated the deck around here to address those issues and also addressed window placements and all, and the neighbor was satisfied with that and didn't comment again on the project. This deck here, we talk with the applicant. We don't need this deck, so we're fine with that condition to remove it. We have enough decks on the back of the house that's not necessary anymore. So basically, as to the front setback, we need it because we can't keep pushing the house down. It makes sense sort of to have the garage at the same level or as close as possible to the street, which means it needs to be as close to the street as possible to get at the same grade, because of the topography of the lot. And then we're just pulling the house back because that's where we've got flexibility to work with the topography, whereas the garage really needs to be at the same level as the street. And then the side setback is just, respecting the original setback of the house. And our new second story actually complies 100% with the interior setback. So it's only the ground floor that requires that modification.
Okay, I do have some questions, and I guess I'm questioning why the idea with front setback modifications in this area. I've granted a bunch, like you said, because of the topography, and one of the main concerns is this is actually a larger lot, but it's still substandard. It's not even half of what it's supposed to be, but a lot of them are 9,000, 10,000 square feet. So these big setbacks don't make sense for one, and for another, they're slopes, so they want to push it towards the road. And that would be my guess is why the original subdivision was granted the relief to allow a 10-foot setback instead of the required, was it 25? 30.
35 or 30.
Yeah, to pull it all up. So now, in your current design thought, you are pushing it back down and closer to the oak trees and closer and on the slope when you look at the elevations. So I'm just kind of wondering why you didn't put more of the house up front, because
I actually
idea, like with here on this elevation, it's stacked, so it's like 30 feet. There's one that shows it's 30 feet. So for back here, it's a very tall building. And this, I don't know what's being used under here. It's showing, it as floor area.
Let's go back to the site plan. I think that's the best thing to look at.
Okay.
To look at this here. We actually haven't pushed this house any further down the slope than the original house. This oak tree, this is.
But this oak tree is this one here inside the house footprint. So it is down the slope more.
This is the one that was destroyed.
Right. The single family design board was explicit in that they said they did not want us putting anything in the front setback that could be located outside the front setback, and they encouraged us.
No, they were saying the second story mass, but did you explain to them that the original subdivision was granted relief?
Oh yeah, we did, and they said their wording was something like, "Well, you don't have your golden ticket anymore because it's been so long since the Tea Fire, so we don't support that anymore." So what we did is we still stayed away from this tree here, and we have the arborist report that confirms we're fine on this tree. This other tree doesn't exist anymore, and the house, it does stack, but it's still under the height limit. All of these other houses that have been approved and built here stack significantly the same way. They're also conforming with the height limit. They looked specifically at the aesthetics of this house, and they've reviewed these elevations. But, here's a picture of our street. This is our neighborhood.
Yeah, this is the one right behind you. You're over here.
Right, but this is the one next to us on the downhill side. So,
Where's this house?
I'm not sure. That's further over somewhere. But everything stacks significantly on the downhill side, and that's just a function of the topography. We are under the height limit, and the single family design board looks specifically at aesthetics and the height limit and stacking and hillsides, and they preferred this to what we did previously, which was to try to mirror more of the footprint of this, which didn't stack as much, but put far more of the house in the front setback. So they preferred this approach.
Okay, this is a two-story house.
Correct.
This is the
That's the old house,
Yeah.
which was a two-story house.
Yeah, well, this to me looks like a three-story house. I don't know what's the understory area. There's a door, and you look at the, it meets the definition of floor area if it has more than the 5 feet of.
This is the original house with the exact same thing going on. Basically, when you have a slope and you have a floor area that comes out that's supported as a raised floor area, either you have it on stilts and it's open, or you cover it like this is covered here, or like that's covered there.
Well, does this, the line that comes out here, is there a floor or is it dirt all the way down?
It's dirt.
So there's no floor.
There's no floor underneath there.
So what's down under here, under the doorway? The doorway is really tall? Or is this just a...
Amy, what's that door
I don't
doing?
know.
I think that we've just taken it from the original. I don't think we've studied that further quite yet. But I understand what you're saying about that. But I don't feel that. Even if we take that away, I don't feel that there's going to be any kind of floor.
Yeah, there's no floor proposed under there. It's dirt. It's just a perimeter foundation.
That'll be something that'll be checked in plan check, because it will then increase your FAR. It will change a bunch of things. To me, it looks like a 3-story building because it actually does go a little bit over 30 feet, it looks like, in this area. But that all, again, would be checked in plan check.
A lot of these houses are actually approved as 3-story houses. But this house is a 2-story house. It is dirt. We already have a foundation plan which shows that it's dirt, and that can be checked, and you can see that there's no floor area. We are at 64% of the FAR, so we could add 1,000 square feet to this house and not even come close to anything.
No,
but
that's
we're not
fine.
doing
It just
anything
need to be
like
all
that.
documented in that, because later on, I know you're real familiar with the ZIR process too.
Right.
A lot of times this ends up being additional living area, and they say, well, it was shown on the plans as floor, and so what do you expect us to use? So that's just what I'm looking at, is what is intended here. You're in the permit process now, so designate it. What do you want it to be, and really document it right. In terms of the modification, it doesn't per se play into it only in the instance of is this appropriate to have the garage up front and have the building area pushed back. If it's floor area, then maybe the garage can be pushed in more. But in terms of what you're asking for today is the front setback modification and the modification to allow the first and understory area to be in the setback.
Right, and again, going back, let's look at those elevations again, or the sections. This very quickly goes from a usable height to completely unusable height because of the slope. So this was not intended to be a 3-story house. We didn't want it to be a 3-story house. Pushing the garage back would make a very disjointed, cut-up floor plan with unusable rooms
Right.
in a cave on the under 3rd story, which is not what we wanted to do. And to get any sort of usable floor area down there, you would have to start cutting out significantly from the slope, putting integral retaining walls, increasing grading, doing all sorts of things that the city generally discourages on hillsides, which we tried to avoid.
Now, was all of this caissons or just the area near the trees going to be
The
caisson?
whole house is going to be
Caisson.
on caissons and grade beams because of the soils and topography.
Okay. And then the tree protection measures. Yeah, well, in regards to your comment with the design board, I did, review their minutes. I watched some of the first meeting, and it talks about the majority of the board supports the modifications, but requests the 2nd story be located behind the front yard setback. And then the second meeting, they were supportive of it, so they must have looked at something that was more of this design versus the first one.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first design we came in with was literally, the first design approach before I was involved on this thing was to match the footprint of the original house. And the single-family design board said, no, we want you to take a different approach. And so we followed their direction and came up with this design, and this is what they were very supportive of.
Yeah, I understand their comments regarding the front setbacks and stuff, because I'm really protective of them too. In the T-Fire situations, it's different, and I understand it has been vacant for years, and it's a new owner. It's not the same one that was impacted with the T-Fire. But in this area, it is a little different because of the slopes and the small sizes. So I am more supportive of an encroachment into the front yard, which is consistent with the neighborhood, because I drove down the street, and a lot of them are still pushed up. I don't think I reviewed the house right next door to yours. But they all are pushed up to keep away from that oak grove and for the slopes. So, I would have been supportive of more of up to the street. What part, how much, I don't know, but it depends on your design. But I understand where they were coming from with their comments. But in regards to the tree protection measures, I went out to the site. And your photos here, this is before you've cleared off the site now. So I'm assuming this is the tree that was damaged in the fire, that oak tree that was being removed, this white thing here? Is that what it is, or what? Because I was trying to find the tree on the site, and I don't know if this is the same one coming up, but there's two. Does this make sense? These are the pictures I took. I mean, is the tree growing back now, or is that?
It is growing back, and the arborist feels that it can grow back and is, in other words, one of them was dead completely and it's gone, and everybody acknowledges that. The other one is still there and healthy and able to grow back, and we want to preserve it and work the house around it. We think it'll be a nice feature to incorporate the house around, and that's the one that we're keeping there, and that's what those tree protection measures are for.
Okay, so this one that's shown in the footprint, that's gone. It's not on the site. It was taken out.
It doesn't exist anymore. It's
Okay,
dead.
so it was taken out with all the foundations and
Yes.
stuff.
And that was this one here.
Right.
Okay, so the one I saw that was kind of spindly, but it looks like it was trying to grow.
That's this
that
one.
That's this one.
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, a lot of people might just come and just say, oh, it's dead, let's just bulldoze it and not
Right.
have it be a constraint. And we're saying it's
And nurse it and try
can
to
be
get it.
saved. I've done a lot of projects where, we have these trees that look like they're marginal, but, when you have an arborist look at them, they're actually savable, and they turn out to be real assets to the project when you can bring them back. And they come back a lot faster than you'd think. So that's our goal, was to keep this tree and bring it back.
Okay, so that makes sense, because when I was looking at it, I thought, well, it looks like it's trying to come back. That doesn't really make sense, and so I had a question of, does it really need to be removed? So that the one I saw is the one you are,
That's the one we're keeping.
okay.
And the other one, back here,
That's,
was closer
it's
to,
dead,
right, exactly.
okay, and it's
that's gone.
gone, okay. All right, that makes a lot more sense, all right. And then the other one, the other comment on the tree protection. Under the recommendations, it says recommendations for tree protection during construction. Fence off all trees from construction at the critical root zone or where practical. I mean, who decides that? It just seems like it should be fenced off at the critical root zone. And if you're going to, it does say hand trenching. It says all trenching of utilities, irrigation, and lighting shall not encroach within the critical root zone unless approved by the project biologist or arborist. So it seems like it should be fenced at the critical root zone, and if for some reason you need to go in,
Then you fence it there. The
they'll do
arborist
it.
comes and supervises the fencing. The arborist is the one that comes out and sees where it's fenced and signs off on where that is before the construction starts. So if we look at this here, there are areas within the critical root zone. Now this is not a full solid thing that's down here. There's like a caisson that punches down in here.
Right.
And there may be a beam that ties that caisson into the house, but this isn't a foundation impacting that whole area there.
Right.
So this small portion of this root zone, and again, this crown here, we're anticipating where this tree is going to come back to. It doesn't look like this now, but we suspect the roots are under there. This area here there's going to have to be some construction within the root zone there, but all the rest of the root zone is going to get fenced off. So he's writing that condition, I think, to provide himself flexibility of where to put that fencing.
well, then I would like to change this, that it says something to the effect that fence off all trees from construction at the critical root zone unless other area approved by arborist, or it's, just under their supervision, that, it has to be 6 feet. But if they think in some areas it's not necessary, then they can authorize it.
That's fine. Why don't we maybe say final fence installation to be approved by arborist prior to initiation of construction?
Okay. Final fence installation location to be approved by arborist prior to start of construction. Yeah, so we can actually add it as a condition. So are you proposing any other trees, any new trees?
We haven't gotten to our whole landscape plan yet, but we'll be doing that through Single Family Design Board.
And actually, if you see here, when they originally built this part out here, they didn't have any kind of a front yard. So now we have an open area here where we can put planting.
One of the things I noticed with the old, this is the new fire, the pre-fire, not new fire. I'm sure fire department had coronary when they saw this. Just all the trees around the house, and probably made for a really nice setting, but there's just trees overhanging all the houses and everything. That's just a side note anyways. Okay.
It made for a really nice fire path of travel.
Yeah, fire ladder. But okay, so back to the project. All right, so in regards to your request, the front setback modification, or the interior one, I'll do the interior one first. As been stated, it is an undersized lot. He's strict setbacks. It was granted a setback modification when it was built years ago. In the instance of the first story addition, it's supportable. It's a uniform improvement. It carries the wall of the house down, so instead of having to jog it back in, it just, in terms of function, it makes sense. I agree with staff with that balcony. I'm glad you guys are supportive with it because it's not necessary. There's just a door, it's not necessary. So I can support the interior setback modification. In regards to the front setback modification, you are reducing the amount of the encroachment in the front yard. The majority of the second story is outside of the front yard. There is some portions of it inside, but there was a larger majority of the second story in the front setback previously, so you are enhancing the neighborhood. So I could support the request to allow the garage and portion of the building to be in the front setback. And then Joanne discussed the conditions that were originally proposed, and you reviewed those and you're fine with those. And then with the added one we talked about regarding the fencing of the tree. So with that, I can make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve your project subject to the conditions as we revised them today. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if that would occur, either of those would occur, Joanne would contact you.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. The next project is 1635 San Pasquale, if the applicant would like to come up. And if someone's just tuning in today, I did make the announcement at the beginning of the meeting that the item that is scheduled for item 2B, which is 1736 La Cornelia Drive, has been withdrawn, so we're not hearing it today. Anytime you're ready, Joanne.
This is a 5,663 square foot lot, and it's zoned R3, and it's currently developed with 1,137 square foot single family residence. And 2 uncovered parking spaces are provided at the rear of the property. The proposed project involves construction of a new 669 square foot detached 3-car garage with a new 501 square foot dwelling, 1-bedroom dwelling unit above, and for 27 square feet of accessory space to be located under the stairwell. Also proposes demolition of this existing slab area where the parking previously existed. And the 1-story dwelling at the front of the property is to remain unaltered. The request before you today is for a parking modification to provide 3 covered parking spaces instead of the 2 covered and 2 uncovered parking spaces required. The project was reviewed by the Architectural Board of Review and was forwarded to the staff hearing officer with comments. As I said, the required parking is 2 covered and 2 uncovered parking spaces. The request is for a modification to allow 3 covered instead. Transportation staff can support that modification because the new unit is small at 501 square feet, and the property is located close to commercial amenities and transit. However, transportation staff has requested that a condition be included that the portion of the alley in this area behind the dwelling shall be paved. This portion that runs the length of the property, just to clarify. Therefore, a condition has been included to that effect. Site inspection of the property showed a couple of overheight gates here along San Pasquale and one along Valerio Street. So staff has added a condition that those gates will be reduced in height. And the other unpermitted, there was just unpermitted shed and some miscellaneous items stored on the property. So those items were also conditioned to be removed as part of this request. The project is also located in environmental archaeological sensitive areas, and therefore ARC letter report was required, and there's recommendations that standard unanticipated archaeological discovery conditions be included. So staff has added that request. Also should be noted that the open yard is shown on these plans on the next page. Does not, it's not shown correctly, so, but the open yard can be provided. There's several ways that could happen, and staff could discuss that with the applicant further after the meeting. But so we would request that that be corrected upon submittal to this, to the when you go back to the Architectural Board of Review. The scope of the work is within the scope of the 2011 general plan and a program EIR analysis for the general plan for environmental purposes. So staff would like the proposal approved and supported subject to the findings and conditions outlined in the staff report, because the parking demand will be met on site.
Okay, great, thanks. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Yes, Thomas Woodard, owner, and really what Joanne's covered, and it's we've tried to meet everything on that. Just the three-car parking. We had even looked at some other options, but nothing would fit to satisfy to add anything. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing and seeing no one.
Good.
Have you received any comments or letters?
Not received any
Emails?
correspondence.
No? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site and looked around the neighborhood, looked at the alleyway. Here's your photos. So here's the existing street, San Pasquale, and then Valerio comes back this way. Here's the alleyway that Joanne was talking about. So, and here's the concrete pad area. So the garage is going in this area, extending a little bit farther, and then up above. And this is the area looking towards the new building area. In regards to the addition of the unit, I know it's not my purview, it's allowed by zoning and everything. I think that's a great idea. It's a small unit down in the downtown area. I think that's great. It's consistent, although it's not an AUD project. It's a small unit like we're encouraging with the AUD projects, which only require the one parking space. And I know our history has been the smaller units in terms of demand is one unit. So, demand related, it is all met. And in your instance, to be able to fit it in, you don't need any modifications of setbacks or anything. It fits in there. It's just the only problem is where do you put the parking space? And if you weren't on a corner, the easy solution is put it right here.
Exactly.
But that's the street frontage, and we don't want uncovered parking or the building, right up to the front property line. So you are constrained on how to further some of the general plan goals, which I'm sure wasn't the first thing in your mind. You wanted to do the unit, but in terms of my mind, looking at your project, it does further some of our goals and of providing the smaller units and then with the parking. So I think your request is supportable given this area of the city. My only concern is when I went out there is this, it's calling shrubs, but in effect it's a hedge, a tall hedge. And here's an alley and then Valerio Street. So the visibility in this area. So I would like to add a condition that transportation staff look at there's a site visibility triangle, I think it's called.
On the corner lots.
Yeah, so look at that just to make sure that by putting formalizing the parking in this area, that you have adequate site distance so you're not hitting a pedestrian or people, just to improve the site visibility in this area.
Okay, because I do know that they did they did request that I think on the plans that I had taken the shrubs down here to the lower level. But
I noticed that on here, and even your fence is pulled back some, but this it's mainly here. How so this is low. It's not going to help you any with this right here. So just if they can look in and see, and they may say, you know what, we looked at it and. Given the volumes are what, it's fine the way it is, or they may say, no, it needs to be done. But I would like them to look at it just to make sure we're not causing some safety hazard.
Sure. Yeah, the only thing about that, and again, I have no problem with that, but that alleyway is almost, if you went down the other way on the alleyway, I don't know if you did, but it's almost undrivable. because of hedges and everything growing up. So there's really only one building and then there's one straight on, and then one that they built a new
Yeah,
garage.
the straight on
So-
guy, the person came home when I was there. It was
Yeah.
like the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
all-
So it'll be paved at least through here now.
Yeah, it was all up and down, and his car was going, ooh,
Yeah.
and he had a big car, or
So.
the person did. All right, well, so unlike the project before, we didn't have to have much discussion. It's supportable, it's.
Great.
It's the parking modification, I think, for all those reasons I said. So I can make the findings outlined in the staff report, and you reviewed all those conditions in there, and then I'll add the additional one regarding the hedge or shrub
review
in
it.
that area. So I'll make the findings outlined in staff report, approve the project, subject to the conditions as I just revised them. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if either of those would occur, Joanne would contact you.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much.
And I adjourn the meeting.
Okay, I was going to show you.
I've got a case